if I'm looking at an investment, I no longer have to just rely on what the sponsor's telling me. I can kind of create my own ecosystem, if you will, to analyze investments within, which is awesome.
Big tip number two is you can upload any kind of document into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT specific questions about that document. And I've done that before as well. There was a 60, 70 page legal document that I uploaded into ChatGPT and I asked specific questions about what these certain terms are and what something means. And it actually just was able to read it and explain it like a mini lawyer would. Welcome to an exhilarating new episode of our podcast that's set to revolutionize the way you think about real estate investment. Imagining possessing the ability to quickly evaluate any rental property's value in your market with tremendous accuracy, or having the foresight to predict the exact moment that an old water heater will shut down. This is the reality of today's real estate market, thanks to the incredible advancements in artificial intelligence. AI isn't just changing the game, it's rewriting the rules, offering investors like you unprecedented insights. From identifying potential pitfalls in investments through vast data analysis to fine-tuning your rental income on a granular level, AI is quickly becoming an indispensable tool for the savvy investor's arsenal. And who better to guide us through this groundbreaking topic than our special guest, Nathan Loy, a visionary in the realm of real estate and technology. Today, Nathan will unveil the transformative power of AI in real estate, showing you how it can be your ultimate edge in making smarter, more profitable investment decisions. Welcome, Nathan.
Thanks, Ravi. This is an awesome topic. I'm really excited for it today.
Yeah, and I created that intro with ChatGPT, an AI device. That's why I was tongue-tied while I was reading it, because the words that it generated aren't words that I typically use. My English is much simpler than what it presents, but it was a very cool intro. And it's all very true. But again, this is the amazing thing about AI. It's that we can generate intros, we can generate podcast information. We use it all the time on this podcast. We can do so much with it. Before we get into it, I just want to congratulate you, Nathan, because we got a comment, our first comment in our podcast. Somebody said, great information.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, in our journey, we've gone from ones to tens of listeners. Now we got a comment. I mean, we're making
sky's the limit. We're up and up.
Yeah. And then we have a raving fan too. We have one raving fan. So this is all good stuff. All right, let's get into it. What are some examples of AI that I already may be using?
Yeah, this is a really good question. So AI really is, if you think of any kind of predictive software, that's pretty much some sort of AI component is probably integrated into that software. So if you think of recommendation engines when you're on YouTube and there's a video that says, hey, you might like this, or on Spotify and it says, hey, here's some artists that you may like. What that's doing is it's taking kind of your behavioral patterns of content or things that it's known that you've engaged with and that you've liked and that you've watched for a long time, and then predicting other kind of similar kinds of content that you'd also like. And that's kind of the whole point of AI, is that it takes a plethora of data, it consolidates it, it finds patterns, and then it kind of predicts future states of content that's similar to it, or in some cases, content that's not similar at all, depending on kind of what you're looking for. But the current state of AI is it's right now only really as good as the prompts that you give it, specifically when you're talking about any kind of chatbot. So if you ever are online for any kind of like healthcare system, most of those chatbots use some sort of AI that is responding in real time to the questions that you're asking it.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I mean, these chatbots that pop up that you see all the time in various websites are backed by, and many of them are backed by ChatGPT. So there's a tremendous amount of information behind that, but they restrict it to just certain types of things or certain types of information that they want to send across. It's really interesting. I was talking to my cousin about AI and ChatGPT, and he's a little older, and his comment was people thought it would be a better version of Google, but they realized that it's not, and now they're going back to Google. And I'm like, wow, you're so far off from what the reality is, because many of you are already in the space, but some of us that aren't into technology aren't. But it is truly transforming everything. And we're going to look back at this point in our timeline, and it's going to be as pivotal a moment as the initiation of the internet was. Because I remember back then, maybe you're too young to remember this, I don't know, but I remember when we had America Online. That was we got access with a dial-in modem, 2400 baud modem, dialed in America Online, and that was the internet. And we were like, this is okay. It's not great. We had no clue what it was gonna bring us. And that's where we see AI.
And it's still pretty early on in its infancy too, right? Like
Yeah.
when the internet first started, pretty much I remember playing like a pinball game on the internet and how long it took to load. And I was like, man, the internet's cool, but I didn't really have like the full breadth of what the internet could do. And now that we're in 2024 and people are making a living off of the internet and people are trading stocks and creating content, and there's, YouTube, which is housing thousands of videos, which, when the internet first started, the idea of even hosting, a few videos on a website wasn't really capable. I think the same thing is applying to AI, because AI isn't necessarily new. It's been around for a few decades or so, but now it's really kind of coming to the mainstream of kind of the public eye. And now it's really kind of in the last year alone has seen tremendous development. I think it's only going to go up from here.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chat GPT is one we hear about all the time. There's many other options out there, like Claude is one of them. There's Bard. There's probably many more. One thing I like about Chat GPT, though, is it seems to be more accurate than the others. And then also, what's very cool, and I found out this recently, is you can look up instances on Chat based on any topic that you want. So, for example, I'm very much into exercise, health, well-being. There's a HD workout and diet instance. So basically, someone has created this, it put in a ton of information. They've shared this with us. So we just download that instance. So you can just you can go on ChatGPT and figure this out. Even you can Google that, like ChatGPT instances and how to download new ones. And you can get pretty much anything, any topic you want. You basically have an expert right there that's guiding you through the topic because somebody's already created that instance for you. Very cool stuff. So that's really tip number one for those out there. Definitely check that out. And ChatGPT is free. The 4.0 version is really good and it's worth it. It's only $20 a month. I would recommend that for sure. Let's move on. So what are some examples of how AI is used in the real estate industry?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of it right now is, with any tech, is condensing time, right? So you see it a lot on the marketing front, specifically in terms of, hey, what piece of content worked really well, and then kind of replicating that for future content. So in terms of like syndicators and their ability to mass market and create ads and social media content and really kind of engage with their audience, that's been a huge kind of new kind of paradigm shift almost in the real estate space, where a lot of times you had to have kind of a director of marketing really kind of come up with these content pieces, create a content calendar, and now you can condense that within a matter of 5-10 minutes. You can have a full kind of content calendar built out for the entire month, for example, right?
So we just to give you an example, we at Viking Capital have saved over $100,000, six figures in marketing, content, copy creation, just with AI alone. So it's super powerful.
Yeah. And then kind of to what we're touching on earlier is that there's a lot of chatbots that can be used specifically for kind of the leasing process. Surprising, a lot of the kind of new developments that I saw in AI happened on site. So there's different programs out there that can really work in kind of, I would say, kind of like sorting through the initial flow of potential tenants before they even kind of walk in the door of the leasing office. So they can kind of have a full-blown conversation as to what they're looking for, kind of the price range, stuff that could be attractive within the community. For example, I saw this one chatbot where someone had mentioned just in passing that they had a pet, and then the kind of AI recognized that and was able to highlight the updated pet park that they just kind of installed. And so it was really kind of playing to their needs and desires. And then also there's another software that not only focuses on the leasing and touring part of the process, but also on the rent collection part of the process too. So there are AI softwares out there that can predict when certain residents are going to pay, and then also when those residents are most responsive to messages. So for example, if you send a message at 10 a.m. and another message at 3 p.m., and that person's more responsive at 3 p.m., the AI software will start sending those messages around that 3 a.m. time block, because that's when the tenant's most responsive and is most likely to get a response from them. And then lastly, also, they have it on the maintenance side of things too. So there is the software out there, multiple softwares that can predict certain maintenance requests. Like if you took a look at kind of your previous work orders for the past 12 months, it can predict when certain repairs are going to be needed, if it makes more sense to completely replace, for example, a hot water heater than continuously try to repair it. And so it can really help optimize the expense side of things too.
Yeah, it's really amazing, some of these applications. Now, let me ask you this: as an investor, when you're investing with a sponsor, is this something you should ask the sponsor? Hey, are you guys taking advantage of some of these efficiencies with AI?
I think they definitely should, right? If you're going to be kind of investing with those that are at the forefront and really kind of always continuously iterating and improving, they're missing an opportunity if they're not incorporating AI right now. Even as an investor, I've downloaded an offering memorandum, an investment summary, and plugged it into ChatGPT or some other AI softwares and said, hey, what are generally the risks and rewards of this deal? and it can tell me in a matter of seconds where the risk lies in the deal and where the upside lies as well. So if I'm looking at an investment, I no longer have to just rely on what the sponsor's telling me. I can kind of create my own ecosystem, if you will, to analyze investments within, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's an excellent tip. And I really think that's tip number two. Tip number one is, as we mentioned, go into ChatGPT and look up these instances that interest you. But this is a big tip number two is you can upload any kind of document into Chat and ask ChatGPT specific questions about that document. And I've done that before as well. There was a 60, 70 page legal document that I uploaded into chat and I asked specific questions about, what these certain terms are and what something means. And it actually just was able to read it and explain it like a mini lawyer would. Now, one thing to keep in mind is there are some inaccuracies for sure. And the interpretation that it gives you isn't as robust as you would like many times. Like I've noticed that, but certainly to do a cursory overview and extract information, as you mentioned, it's great. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's kind of the double-edged sword of kind of the creative part of AI is that because it has some sort of creativity in it and it's generating responses, sometimes those responses aren't always 100% accurate. It's not like searching Google, for example, because there is some sort of like predictive analysis of things that might be similar, but it's not necessarily looking just for the truth, right? I've seen people that have created entire kind of, fictional stories that they read to their kids at bedtime. And so a system that does that might not always be the most accurate system as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I've also noticed, I've tried Claude, I've tried Bard. I've noticed there are many more errors with those than ChatGPT. I'm by no means an expert. You've been really tasked to research all about AI, so you're much more than me. Is that true? Have you noticed that?
Yeah, mainly because ChatGPT is one of the most robust kind of machine learning softwares out there. There's that, and there's another software called Characters AI, and that's really kind of another AI software that you can ask any kind of character, whether it's fictional or nonfiction, and ask it a series of questions. Right? There's one that, for example, it's like an Elon Musk kind of AI, and so you can ask the chatbot questions, and it will respond as if it was Elon Musk, given that it kind of has all this data of how he talks, how he thinks, what he's created, what's failed, what's not failed. And so yeah, it's cool. There's different kind of AIs for what you're looking for, but in terms of like chat-based AI, ChatGPT is one of the most robust ones out there for sure.
Yeah, I mean this is an interesting. We can take a little bit of a segue here because this is a very interesting topic. You can I know in ChatGPT you can do this, but as you mentioned, this other AI program you can as well. But you can emulate someone else's wording, someone else's style, and there are also programs that can actually mimic their language patterns, their voice. So you can almost recreate that person. It's like a deep fake. Like you can recreate them. You have their images online, and chat or not chat GPT, but other AI software systems can recreate that image. So it's becoming a new world out there, and you really have to be careful about what kind of information you're receiving because it could just be a complete deep fake that you're
Yeah. And I've done that with like multiple experts in the field too, not just with real estate, but I don't know if you ever saw those videos that are on YouTube of those actors that have kind of a round table, and it's like all like 4 or 5 really famous actors, and you can kind of host your own round table with pretty much whoever you want. I was trying to predict what's to come in 2024 for kind of the real estate industry. I said, hey, pull all the knowledge, all the expertise from the top real estate gurus, real estate experts, people who know the market inside and out, and then how would they look at kind of the current situation that we're solving, and then what kind of solutions would they pose for 2024 to really kind of best position yourself? I mean, you can do that with anyone literally throughout history, which is pretty wild.
That's very cool. And that's another, I think that's tip number 3 right there is you can basically pull the brain of any one of these, very intelligent, noteworthy, intellectual people, basically create an instance so that chat gpt or whatever device you're using is using that knowledge base and pulling from that. As long as it's all that out there on the internet, it can do that, which is really cool. All right, so we spoke about AI in real estate, how as an investor you may want to ask the sponsor and even the property management company if they're using AI. Can you analyze an investment using AI as an investor?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And there's kind of multiple ways you can do it. So it depends on how much data you kind of have available to you. But let's say, in an ideal world, you have all the data available to you and you say, hey, I want to analyze this specific investment. What would I do? A few things you can do is you can throw in the financial statements into ChatGPT or some other kind of chat-based machine learning and have it pull out certain again, pattern recognition, certain comparables, so how your expenses or how your revenue or how your rent compares to property around it, and then how to kind of optimize that for the future. So if, there is this investment, for example, that has, a great value add business plan to it, right? And you threw in those financials, you threw in the rents, and you threw in all of the rents from the surrounding areas, you can kind of tell, hey, are my rents truly below market? And is there room here to really renovate this property and really bring, rents up 200, $300? There's viability there. You can also kind of do the same thing for a sponsor's track record, right? You could just throw in, hey, here are all the previous investments. Here are all the previous returns. What's the likelihood that this new deal is gonna match that return profile? But in general, you can also analyze the market too. I know that some out there kind of stopped learning, quote unquote, if you will, kind of 2020, 2021. So I might not have the most recent data, but you can kind of, say historically, how has Atlanta or how has Tampa or how has kind of this major city performed throughout these different real estate cycles? And then if you can even ask it, hey, what real estate cycle are we in now? And then how is this city predicted to perform in the future in terms of supply and demand dynamics, right? There's multiple times where I've uploaded multiple reports as to say, here's what's happened in kind of Q3, Q4 of 2023. Knowing this data, knowing kind of how this market has performed, what's the likelihood that it's going to perform the same in the future, different? And then if it is different, how is it going to perform? And so you can do kind of a whole analysis just with AI, but again, just keep kind of an ear to the wind, right, for caution that you're not solely relying on AI, right? The whole point of AI is to really condense time and to be used as a tool, but not to solely rely on it to perform whatever task you need it to.
Yeah, that's a very important cautionary point that you give people, because there are multiple times when I've done the same thing. I've inputted data and then I get these results and I know that they're wrong. So you really have to pay attention to that. It's interesting. I was doing that with Claude AI, and it was so every question I asked, there was one wrong answer. And I actually got frustrated with Claude. And I was like, you're ridiculous. Like I wasn't using those words, but some pretty harsh words that I'm not going to say on the podcast here. But it responded. It said, "I'm so sorry. I'm failing you." It was so empathetic in its answer. I felt bad for being so harsh with it. It was really interesting. But then I stopped using Claude after that.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about Claude specifically is that AI software has been coded to be very kind of like PC in its responses. So it will kind of censor itself. So I'm not surprised that it was kind of apologizing to you, which kind of like there's a whole kind of like whole other topic we go off of like the moral kind of use of AI and like having it like a machine literally apologize to you for not giving you the response it wants. I don't know. It's this whole kind of moral
Yeah,
question.
right. It's making me reevaluate how my relationships are. I'm like, well, hey, Claude has apologized to me. Why wasn't anybody else? Okay, so we spoke about investor information. What about AI in screening, selecting tenants for properties, capital planning, budgeting? Like, how does it help with all that stuff?
Yeah. So in terms of tenant selection, I still think again we're in kind of the early phases of this part of AI, but there are AI softwares out there that can predict kind of the renting habits of a certain demographic and or a certain person. So I've seen AI software that can pull kind of all the public data about a person. And it's funny, I was talking with the person who's giving me the demo, and he's like, you could probably predict with a pretty certain accuracy when I'm going to go grocery shopping throughout my day. Because I go grocery shopping, or sorry, throughout my week. Like I go grocery shopping pretty much 2 times a week on these days, generally in these times. So it wouldn't take a genius to figure out, when I'm going to go grocery shopping. And the same is true for any kind of predictive analysis that AI is going to do, is they can generally tell you, hey, when does this person typically, look for a new place to live, for example, right? Is it every 2 years, every 3 years? And that can start to build up this whole kind of almost tenant profile of prospective tenants and show you which ones are the most likely to rent at your property and those are the most likely to stick to renew and kind of stick on site too.
And to pay as
And
well,
hey,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, there's a software out there that can predict within I think 70% reliability whether someone would renew on site and or pay on time as well. And so that's what they called kind of the stickiness of that resident is how likely are they to kind of stick on site rather than move and be left with a vacancy,
Yeah.
which is incredible, right?
Yeah, that's super important, because what we're seeing now, especially in Atlanta, but it's really all over the U.S. We're seeing a lot of bad debt that's accumulating because there's a ton of fraud during the COVID era, with people trying to move into apartments. There's an eviction moratorium, so people weren't moved out, and there's a tremendous amount of bad debt that has accumulated, and we're slowly getting those tenants out of the properties. And we're using AI now to get the best ones in. And that's the great thing about having higher end assets like, A minus B plus type assets in A minus B plus areas, because they're good tenants that want to live there, and you can select those good ones. Whereas if you're looking at C properties and C areas, like, those tenants kind of go through all the good ones, and, they cycle the kind of the ones that aren't as qualified cycle through, and they're the ones that you're getting in those types of properties. You just have to be more diligent about who you're accepting in those types of properties. But it's like AI is certainly helping in that endeavor and cleaning things up.
Yep. And you can kind of see where those residents came from too, right? Kind of do like a lead generation analysis almost, where you can say, hey, kind of draw conclusions for here's a group of tenants that traditionally pay on time. The great tenants, there's delinquency. Where do these tenants generally come from? How are we finding these tenants? And that will also, have you better direct or better focus your marketing for pinpointing similar residents to kind of come in the door. Because ultimately that's ideally what you want as an operator, right? You want tenants that pay on time, that aren't delinquent, that have pride of ownership, that enjoy living on site, and so you want to find similar tenants in that regard too.
Absolutely. So we spoke a bit about marketing. Something else that is becoming more and more popular with AI is image generation. Do you have experience with this? How can this be useful in marketing?
Yeah, there's a lot of that goes back to that kind of creative part of AI. There's a lot of softwares out there that are working kind of on the art part of AI. And so when AI first kind of came about, there's this large consensus that it won't be able to do things that humans could do, right? It won't be able to do the creative part, the artistic part, the image generation part. And what we found is that ironically, it's kind of the opposite. So we thought that initially it was going to be like truck drivers and blue collar workforce, and kind of taking over kind of the manual heavy lifting. And what we found is that it's not necessarily the manual heavy lifting part that AI has really kind of come into the fold. It's mainly been on the kind of creative, more kind of white collar jobs. And so when we're talking about image generation, specifically for marketing, that's really seen like kind of a huge, really blow up of AI generated images. And so you can, have certain prompts that will say, hey, I want to create this image, right? You describe the image, and I want it in the style of blank, whether it's photorealistic, cartoon, animated, and it will create kind of an image that you want. And you can use that on the marketing front. Again, with other AI, like you can say, hey, these are images that worked, these are images that didn't work, and kind of create a library of content. There's even AI that I've seen that is pretty incredible. So there was this AI that was you can kind of draw whatever you want, and it will create an AI image based off of what you drew. So you can draw kind of the face of a bunny, and it'll create an AI kind of generated bunny face, which
Wow,
is incredible. So if you
that's
have
really cool.
a marketer who's really kind of skilled in drawing it and knows exactly what they want to create, they can create, images like that in a matter of minutes rather than hours, days, weeks to create kind of a single piece of content.
What is the name of that software?
It's new. I don't know off the top of my head. I know
Okay.
there is another software called Gemini that Google's rolling out. And Gemini is one of the most powerful AI softwares. It's not available just yet to the private sector, but it did kind of the reverse, where someone was drawing something and it was able to predict what that person was drawing. So they drew what looked like a bird at first, and like, oh, it has a beak, it has feathers, it has wings. It's probably a bird. And then they drew water around it. It's like, oh, well, this bird is now on water. It's most likely a duck. And so it was using kind of AI to pull conclusions based off of what it was seeing, which is something that we haven't seen AI really do before in terms of image recognition. Because it's one thing to create images, but it's another thing to recognize what they are in terms of kind of searching up in the whole library of resources. Like it's tough to say, hey, what's the difference between a dog and a cat just by visually seeing it to a computer, right? To humans, it makes a lot of sense. It's almost innate to us, but the
Yeah.
same is not for a computer.
Yeah, that's incredible. What I did with my kids, you mentioned this earlier, is I created a story based on their particular characteristics. So I talked to my kids about, like, hey, what do you think of yourself as in terms of, your style of communication, how athletic you are, how smart you are, and these types of things. We put it into Chat GPT and asked Chat GPT to create a story with them as the protagonist. And then also we created an image of the story as well. And it happened all in a matter of a few minutes. So we had like basically a storybook that I would read them and in with images of them. It was very cool. Though
I love it.
ChatGPT didn't create the best images. If you're looking for image creation, there's so many better options out there.
Yep. Yeah. Midjourney's an AI software that a lot of people use for image generation. There's a whole plethora of them out there too.
Great. So before we end, so we've given folks some ideas of what AI can do, how they can use AI. If you're an investor and you're looking to invest in multifamily and you're not sure what sponsor to choose, you want to compare, portfolios of one sponsor to another, can AI help with this?
Yeah. Yep. Most definitely. It's funny. There's very little AI can't help with. We're finding out, but
Yeah.
it's better at certain tasks than others. So if I was kind of an investor using AI, one of the first things I would do is any question that I'm asking myself, whether it's about the sponsor, whether it's about the market, whether it's about the deal, I would first throw into an AI software. And I know that AI isn't going to be like kind of the end solution and the end all be all for a lot of investors out there, but it can help supplement kind of some of the lingering questions that you have. So one of the questions I asked it recently is, hey, why is this specific market good and or bad for multifamily investments? And so it gave me kind of a whole, hey, historically, this has been the supply and demand. This is kind of the employment diversification. Here's kind of who's moving into the property. Here's some risks with the market. So even if I had a sponsor that I really liked and I trusted, but I didn't know a ton about the market that they were moving into or the market that they just picked up a deal in, I could get a very quick, succinct snapshot of that market and help kind of calm my concerns. And that's the whole point of kind of de-risking your investments is the more knowledge that you have and the more knowledge that you're able to apply, the less risky that investment that becomes, right?
Yeah.
So that's one. Secondly, I'd also, talk and kind of use the AI software as kind of like a sounding board for my thoughts, right? That the whole point of AI is for it to be a thinking partner alongside you. So you say, hey, I've invested with a sponsor before. Here are kind of my previous returns. Here's the kind of deal I invested in, but I don't know, anything about this new fund or this new kind of asset class that this investor is moving into. Again, describe all the benefits, the risks, the returns, the things I should be looking out for, and I can even, have it create a list of questions for me that I can then go back and ask the sponsor, right? Say,
Yeah.
hey, if I don't know enough about car washes, for example, right? What are kind of the top five questions I should ask the sponsor that will allow me to garner, that Pareto principle, the 20% of information that will allow me to kind of predict the 80% of the results. And to really kind of use it as a knowledge base and as your own kind of vault of knowledge, right now I think is probably the biggest upside to investors. And then again, to your point, which we mentioned earlier, is condensing the time it takes to review and analyze documents. I know a lot of investors, when they get a PPM, they get a subscription document, they get the kind of the typical investment documents. They spend a good 2, 3, 4 days just reading the documents, going over, and you can do that. Right? I'm not saying that that's not a viable choice, but it's also a lot quicker and potentially a lot more efficient to just upload the document and have the AI again analyze the document for you. Again, being mindful of some of the hallucinations and some of the false content it can produce, but at least we'll be able to pull out the main snapshots. And I've even done that too with multiple documents, especially when documents get revised, like when we're negotiating certain documents and there's certain revisions going around, you can upload multiple documents and say, hey, what are the changes that happen between, this version 1 and version 2, and it'll pull out all of the kind of changes that were made too.
Oh, that's an excellent tip. And all those were great tips. I think we were talking about various points, take home points, and I think you really mentioned. I think we talked about three, but you really mentioned four, five, and six.
Yep.
Four being vetting the sponsor, vetting the location of those types of investments. Five being asking the AI how they should frame the questions, the proper questions to ask, and that being your sounding board. But the six, comparing documents, because when you sign a PPM or when you read it through a PPM and then you're told to sign one, you want to make sure that they're the exact same, because sometimes there are edits and you want to make sure that the edits don't change the dynamic of the deal after you've reviewed something. So that's a huge tip right there. I mean, oftentimes it require like hours and hours of meticulous, just focus and making sure your every word is correct, but an AI could do it in a matter of seconds. Awesome. Well, Nathan, this was super fun. I really enjoyed talking about this topic. Anything else that we haven't talked about in terms of AI usage or even some like fun, creative ways to use AI?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, AI right now is only limited to kind of your imagination. There's people who are creating meal plans, content, again, stories for their kids. There's a whole plethora of what you could use AI for. I think the more creative you get with it, the better off it's going to be. 2023 was really kind of the year where AI came into the fold. And right now there's a lot of noise in the industry where there's a lot of AI out there and it's not all kind of the same quality. I think 2024 is going to be really the year where you're going to have to parse through all of the different softwares out there and really find the ones that work for you and to find the ones that really add the most benefit to your life. For me personally, I've used it a lot in terms of email creation and email writing. There's a software called Magical AI that can integrate with your email and help you write different emails, help speed up kind of the time it takes to respond to emails. There's other AI that can integrate with your calendar and can schedule appointments for you, move things around to optimize your day. Really, if there's anything that you think, hey, this would be a productive tool, there's some sort of AI I'm pretty sure out there that can help aid you in that, right? And that's kind of the point. Is right now we're using AI to really work alongside of us and have things be efficient. And then I think in the next coming years is where you're really going to see the explosive part of the creative part of AI. I think once AI gets combined with augmented reality and virtual reality, that's going to be kind of a whole nother beast that we're going to deal with. But it's important to try to stay on top of everything. And then lastly, I'd say that there are, we've talked a lot about the upside and the positive aspects of AI, but there is some kind of unknowns because it is such a new kind of technology, is we don't really have a full understanding of data privacy. And, if I upload certain documents or certain content to an AI, is that shared? Who has access to it? So I just would be very cautious about uploading anything that is sensitive data, or if it is sensitive data, that you remove kind of the sensitive part of it before you upload it. And there's also, again, like algorithm bias and those hallucinations that we talked about where it's not always accurate data. So just double check for accuracy. And then lastly, the implementation costs too. So there are some pretty high costs to really kind of create custom AI right now. And so it really has to make sense. And so I would start with a lot of the free low cost AI to kind of get dip your toe into the AI kind of realm and then see what makes the most sense to you, what is the most helpful to you, and then really kind of double down on those without getting too distracted with all the different AIs that are out there.
Yeah, awesome tips. And before we end, I'll just add something fun that I discovered with AI. So you can create an instance of anyone you want. And I'm talking specifically about ChatGPT here because I feel like it's probably the most accurate. But for example, I spoke earlier about my kids. So you can put in an instance of their personality, how they react to things. Even if you text message one another, you can upload those text messages to ChatGPT, and it'll read those text messages and it'll understand the person that they are, their personality type. You can even do a DISC profile on that person or kind of figure out what their DISC score is. If you don't know DISC score, look it up. It's a very interesting personality test. But you put that in there and ChatGPT understands that. So if you want to ask a question about, hey, what kind of gift would they like? Or how would they react to this situation? Or how should I negotiate this with this person? It will tell you exactly how to do that. And I've tried that. I've tried that with, my kids, my partner, my friends. Like we've, tried different things, and it's been so helpful. It's almost been like in some ways, like a counselor, therapist. It's been a coach. It's been, like a kind of a friend. It's just amazing what it can do. So that's another fun thing that I discovered. So all that being said, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you, Nathan, for taking the time and energy to understand AI as you have, because I know you put in a tremendous amount of time into doing this, and we hope what we've shared with you all is helpful and beneficial. And if it is, leave a comment, give us a like, subscribe. It's very helpful to us. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ravi.
If you like this podcast, please hit subscribe or a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time.